Okay, so far we've really been doing a deep dive into JavaFX. And so we've looked at not only the stage and the scene and the FXML and the CSS, but now what we've really started to examine into were the nodes that we can insert into the scene graph. And we've looked at image view, and then we've looked at text. And now when we started to look at text, one of the things we brought up that text supports is fonts. And so I want to kind of do a deeper examination into that text attribute of the font class that's supported by JavaFX. So here, I just want to do a quick introduction to the font class. I want to create a font instance. I want to use that font instance. And then I just want to list the installed font families and names that are available to us. So a quick introduction here, the JavaFX font class is located inside of JavaFX. There's a scene package. The scene package has a text package that organizes all of the critical classes that relate to using text in our GUI. And so one of those concrete classes is the font class. And so the font class enables you to load different fonts for use in your JavaFX application. So a font is a text style. And so all text is rendered with the same font, and it will look similar. So in a JavaFX font, in this JavaFX font lecture, you'll learn how to load and set fonts using JavaFX. We kind of saw how to do that briefly when we were talking about text, but here you'll learn much more, in much greater detail, your options here. So if you want to create a font instance to use fonts in JavaFX, you have to create JavaFX font instances. So the easiest way to create a JavaFX font instances to use the static factory methods inside of our font class. And that's what we did in our prior examples. So the following example shows how to create a JavaFX font instance using the many variations of the font class static factory methods. So let's take a look at some of these examples. We have our font family that we can represent as a string. And let's say, for instance, we'll use the font family Arial. And suppose that here, then we define the font size as a numerical data, double data type. The font weight, we're going to pull from, say, for instance, the font weight class. And again, it's going to have a set of constant values that represent what the font weight could be. And then we have the font posture, which will be different properties of our font, such as making italic. So here we have our font posture. Again, a number of constant values that represent the various values that a font posture can have. So if I want to create a font, I could either just pass to this factory method font the font family as a string, or I can just give a font size as a double value. I could do two parameters where it's the font family as a string as the first parameter and the font size as a double value as the second parameter. I could do this here where I can define the font family as a string, the font weight as a font weight object, and then the font size as a double value as the third parameter. I could also create a font where I give the font family as a string as the first parameter, the font posture, which is whether it should be italic or not, as the second parameter, and the font size as a double as a third parameter. Or if I want to set all four of them explicitly, I could do the font family as a string, the font weight as a font weight object, a font posture as a font posture object, and finally the font size as a double value. So once you've created a JavaFX font, you can use it by setting it on whatever JavaFX component is capable of using a font. So for instance, you can set it on a JavaFX text element. So here's an example of setting a font instance on a text element. So suppose that we've created this font and we're just going to use a string. So we can define the font family. And once I have that font created, I can have this text element. And so then I could just do text.setFont and then pass that font element or that font object into it. So precisely how a font object is applied to a given JavaFX element depends on the specific JavaFX element. So in the JavaFX text example that you see above, the font object is applied to that text element using the setFont method. So the JavaFX font class provides two static methods that can list the font families and font names installed on the system. These methods are the getFamilies and getFontName methods. So here are some examples of how we can get either of those. It returns back a list of string elements. So if on font, the class, again, these are static methods, we can get the list of families, the font families, or the list of font names, and then we can iterate through those to see what font names are available to us. So both font family names and font names can be used when creating a font instance. You can provide either the font family name or the font name in the font factory method as a parameter. Excellent. And really, that's all I have to say. Let me see if there's an example that I want to share here. And so, yeah, let me go to my example inside a font. So inside the example here, I have going to import application. I'm going to import, put these in the order, stage. I'm going to import scene. I'm going to import a layout element. That's pane is going to be the layout element. Perfect. Going to import color. Now notice color comes from scene.thePane package. And the V position comes from the geometry because that's actually part of shape. And then we'll import everything from text. So here, what we'll do also is import our list so that we get our list back. And let's see here. Let's take a look. So I'm going to create a font family name, Arial. I'm going to create a size. We'll do font weight bold. We'll do font posture italic. And here I'm going to create all those fonts that I gave in the example slides. And then what we'll do is we're going to set, then we're going to create some font instances. So here we're going to create a font of Arial, and we'll call that Arial font. We'll do a font that's Arial, that's bold, that's size 36. We'll save that in a variable called Arial font bold 36. We'll create some text here. So we have a create text method that we've defined. Let's take a look at that. Create text. We can pass in all these attributes, X, Y position, a font, and a string of the text to be displayed. This is just going to create a text element. It's going to smooth the text. It's going to set the font. It's going to set the fill color to be dark magenta. It's going to set the origin to be that V position on the baseline. And then we're going to set an XY, which is going to be defining these parameters. So that's just a little helper method. So here I'm going to create the text. I'm going to pass it the string. This is the text in Arial. And then I'm going to pass that Arial font. Then we're going to create text where it uses the bold Arial and then the 36 font size. Then we'll use Roboto and then Roboto with that's bold at size 36. And then we'll create that text. Then we'll use Courier New. And again, Courier New, that's bold and 36. And we'll create text all with those parameters. Then once we have all of these text elements, we're going to create a new pane and we're going to add all those text elements to the pane. That's our layout object, so that the pane is our parent class. And now it has all these children nodes that are our text elements. Then we're going to add the pane, the layout component, to our scene. And then we'll set our scene to our stage and we'll tell our stage to show. And then for one last thing, what we'll do is we'll grab those font families and names and we'll just go ahead and iterate through and print out those font names. Excellent. Okay, so this essentially takes all the code that we took in the sample slides and we will go ahead and run it. So let's go ahead and go into my helper runner here. And I'm going to do font example. We're going to invoke that main method that we just kind of walked through. And let's go ahead and import that. Let's import that class so we can actually run it. And let's run this. And there we go. We can see we have our text in Arial, and then our text that is bolded in size 36, our Roboto text, and then our text in Roboto. that's bold and in 36 size, and then our text in core year new, and then bolded core year new in 36. And you can see how we can put all of those different formatted text using the various fonts into our pane, and it respects the XY positioning on that. And then here inside my console, you could see just how many different fonts are available to you that are built right into the JVM. And any of one of these you can go ahead and use for your styling. Okay, so that's the demo that we have for our font.